in this afternoon. And Nancy, welcome to the program today.
Well, thank you, Pastor Al. And yes, it is a beautiful day, and I've just been enjoying the autumn leaves so much too. I love to walk around Euclid Creek. But the reason I called today is I was listening to Pastor John Lutz,
Mm-hmm.
as the show preceding yours,
Right,
and he
excellent
was,
show,
yeah,
yes.
excellent, yeah. And he was talking about toward the end of his show this woman who some man had killed some of her relatives, and yet she forgave this man. But also, I've heard, I've read in the Bible that the person that's committing the sin against you is supposed to repent. It did not sound like this person repented before she forgave him, and I just see two totally contrary philosophies or interpretations of the Bible, whatever you call it. So if you could just explain to me, different pastors say, oh, they have to repent. Other ones say, no, you should just forgive everybody. And so I see, pros and cons of each one. Like if the person doesn't repent and you forgive them, they can keep committing that same crime over and over because they feel like they can get away with it. But on the other hand, you can harbor bitterness in your heart for literally years if you don't forgive someone that's wronged you. So it probably depends on the situation, but I would appreciate your input on that. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And you see things like this periodically where somebody will express forgiveness for these people who have done terrible things,
Mm-hmm.
and I do believe that part of that forgiveness process, is to help keep us from being consumed with bitterness, like you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about, because
Mm-hmm.
bitterness is a very dangerous thing, and it gets a hold in people's
Mm-hmm.
lives, and it really
Yes.
grows. It's like I
Yes.
was looking out our back window at the leaves changing colors, and I was noticing going up the one tree in our backyard, there was a little vine of poison ivy that was growing up there, and that reminded me of in the Bible where it talks about I'm trying to think of where that verse is about uh, bitterness, where it calls it. Hey, there it is, Hebrews chapter 12. I was looking, trying to thumb through here, trying to find it. Hebrews 12:15, where it says, "Looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be
Mm-hmm.
defiled." And that's a great
Yes.
verse when you think about it in terms of bitterness. And I think of poison ivy when I think of that verse,
Oh,
and
that's a good analogy.
I think it relates very well to forgiveness, because sometimes there's people who have wronged us that you're never going to be able to get them to acknowledge it because they may have died, for
Mm-hmm.
instance,
Exactly.
uh, and we could constantly harbor bitterness towards them,
Mm-hmm.
um, and
Mm-hmm.
I've got something I want to share, an analogy along with the forgiveness as well here in a minute. But before I forget about with the root of bitterness here, I think this applies because if we're an unforgiving person,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we'll justify that unforgiving spirit, and we'll come up
Mm-hmm.
with all the good reasons for it. I look out and see that poison ivy vine that's growing up the tree in the middle of my
Mm-hmm.
backyard,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you know poison ivy is really a beautiful plant. It's not an ugly plant.
Yes.
Nice glossy
Yes.
green leaves, and
Uh-huh.
then in the fall they turn nice and red and yellow and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and they
Mm-hmm.
get nice red berries on them, and the birds
Mm-hmm.
like them, and I can justify all the reasons why I should let that poison ivy vine grow, just like a person with an unforgiving spirit,
Mm-hmm.
can allow that to continue to grow in their heart. But when it
Mm-hmm.
starts to turn into bitterness, people will hold on to that bitterness and think of all the reasons why it's justified being there. But, as that says, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be damaged by that bitterness. But it also
Mm-hmm.
says, and thereby
Exactly.
many be defiled. So, I can go out there and get into that poison ivy and have a terrible rash. But not
Mm-hmm.
only me, everybody else that comes in contact with it is going to get that. And so it's got to be dealt with, and you've got to go to the root, because if I just go out there and cut the vine, it's going to spring right back up again. You got to kill it at the root.
At the root, yeah.
Exactly. And I think what happens when we become unforgiving, it allows bitterness to spring up like a root of, it's the root of bitterness that springs up, and then it just consumes you over time.
Yes, it does.
And those around you it affects, just like that poison ivy does. And so it's got to be dealt with. It's a dangerous thing.